Obviously, what happened to Helen Yona Baten Chana is something that is very, very sad. I'm personally moved by the people outside the hospital every night, praying, davening. It's such a kiddush Hashem. I know somebody who works in the area, and one of their colleagues that work there, they're not Jewish, and they were so impressed and moved how every night people are outside the hospital and they're praying for her. And what I understand, it's really against the odds, but it's extremely sad. But the response, the communal response, is so inspiring. I genuinely feel privileged and blessed to be in this type of community. It's such an uplifting thing. And Be'ezrat Hashem, this shir should be l'rfuata and l'rfuat Sarah Naya Bat Mazal, Ronen ben Rachel, Asaf ben Sofia, Rabbi Yochanan Moshe ben Nasamalka. And also this should be Leilui Nishmat Shmuel David ben Meir. Yes. Leah Bat Abraham. Okay, so Nitza Leah Bat Abraham. Okay, so Be'ezrat Hashem, on Monday night we're all going to celebrate Pesach, and Pesach is a good and it's a fun holiday. The interesting thing about the holiday is people who don't celebrate much Pesach, or you're inviting your fellow Jews who, they don't so much come around the Seder table. Or even if you end up inviting someone who's not Jewish, you think you're coming to a big meal, then you start handing out pamphlets to people. Before you can even eat, you go and you start reading. You start opening and you start reading. And people come hungry a lot of times, and they want to rush through it. Just a small recommendation: make sure you eat a little before you have something in your stomach. That way you can really take the time to enjoy the Seder, because there's a lot to it. And it's a really enjoyable time to be with family, to be with friends. And I want to start with the Haggadah. The Haggadah begins where we come inside, we do Kiddush, and then we wash the hands, we dip in the karpas, and then we begin the main part of the Haggadah, which is called the Magid. The Magid is the part of the Haggadah where we start telling the story of the Exodus of Mitzrayim, and we discuss the destruction and how they wanted, what the Egyptians did to us, and what other enemies of the Jewish people did to us. We mentioned Lavan Arami, who I'm going to talk about today as well. And then we go through the redemption process and how we redeemed from Mitzrayim. But the first thing we begin with, we begin with a portion called Ha-Lahma Anya. Ha-Lahma Anya, it's Aramaic. And we say a paragraph in Aramaic. And a lot of people, if you don't sit and learn Gemara, which is the Talmud, which is the majority of the language of the Talmud is Aramaic, you won't understand what's being said. So today, I'm going to tell you what it says, because we begin the portion of the Magid, and the portion of the Magid is so important that it's a biblical mitzvah. We have mitzvot that come from the rabbis, and then we have mitzvot that come from the Torah. It's a mitzvah that v'lesaper be'etziat Mitzrayim. We have to recount the story of the Exodus. We have to give it over, the miracle. It's a mitzvah that we have from the Torah. It's a very important mitzvah. And it begins in Aramaic, which a lot of people don't understand. What is it saying? What is the first portion? What is it saying? So I'm going to tell you. It says, Ha lahma anya, which means ha means this, lahma means, the word lechem means bread, anya means it could be oppression, or the bread of affliction, or even anya means the word poverty, of being poor. I'm not going to go through all of it, it's a small paragraph. And then we say that this is the bread, right, that our forefathers ate in Mitzrayim. And then it says the following, Kol dichfin yete ve'echol, which means this, let all those who are hungry to come and eat. So we're not breaking bread tonight, we're breaking matzah tonight. But we're having a meal. That's what we're doing. And so the question is, it's very strange. We normally, when you invite someone for Shabbat, when do you invite someone for Shabbat? Before you do Kiddush or after you do Kiddush? Before you do Kiddush. Over here, we come from Bet Knesset, we do Kiddush, we do Netilat Yadayim without bracha, so we can dip the karpas, and then we say the following: whoever, let all those who are hungry come and eat. We invite, after we do Kiddush, we're already sitting on the table. Isn't that strange? So what is that all about? It's the first thing that we're going to try to understand today. The second thing is that we're beginning a very important mitzvah, as I said before. Why are we using a language that nobody's familiar with, Aramaic? It's a very difficult language. Nobody's familiar with that language. We're beginning that portion with the language that is somewhat alien or foreign to us. What's unique about this language that the rabbis decided you're going to begin this mitzvah with this language? And I'm telling you, the answer is not going to be disappointing. So, the Pesach Seder is something that people surround themselves at the table. And what do? We celebrate the redemption, right? The fact that we left Mitzrayim. And what's fascinating about this is that everybody in the table, everybody's a guest of honor. Everybody's a guest of honor. You're not a regular guest, you're a guest of honor. What's the difference? I'll tell you in a moment. If a person here is being invited, right, to someone's house, you're coming in, you're sitting down. Is it appropriate, if you're a guest, to invite somebody else as well with you? If you're a guest, typically speaking, it's not appropriate. The Talmud, the Gemara also says this. The Gemara says in Masechet Bava Basra that this is the Lashon, that Oreach machnis oreach, it's not the right thing to do. If a guest decides to bring a guest with him, it's not the right thing to do. Obviously not if you ask. If you ask, it's, hey, you're close with somebody, hey, I have a friend, do you mind if he joins me? That's fine. But if you bring a guest without them knowing, that's not really the right thing to do. I remember when I was in Israel, I was studying in yeshiva, and one of my aunts, who I was very close with, I spent Shabbat by her, and I asked her, can I bring a guest over with me, one of my friends? I'm like, is there room? So she answered me in Hebrew in the following way. I never forgot. She says, "Im yesh makom balev, yesh makom babayit." If you have room in the heart, you have room in the house. I never forgot it. I'm not saying this is a case where you ask, it's appropriate. But if you don't ask, obviously it's not appropriate to bring a guest. Now, when we say, everybody says on the table, let those who are hungry come and eat, which means if I'm a guest on Pesach, I'm inviting more guests. How can I do that? It's not appropriate to invite guests if I'm a guest. If I'm a guest of honor, it's very different. If someone's being honored in a dinner as a guest of honor, they don't pay for the dinner. They may even ask what's going to be on the menu because it's about them. That means Pesach is about everybody on the table. Everybody is a guest of honor. Which leads me to the following. Since now we're not regular guests, we are guests of honor, we're celebrating our own redemption. You have a collective redemption and you have a personal redemption. So it's a celebration of something that in the last year that you felt like you were being redeemed from. You can connect to that reality as well. But it's very important for the Magid, the person who's beginning to lead, call him the Seder leader, it's very important for him to make the guests feel comfortable. And that's not an easy thing to do, especially if you don't know the person. And so the Seder leader has this, it's imperative, and he has this responsibility and obligation to make sure that everybody can speak freely, everybody can communicate. There are people who are shy and they don't feel like they can communicate openly. The job of the person leading the Seder is to make sure they speak. Why is it important for them to speak? Because everybody needs to participate in the storytelling of the Exodus, of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Since everybody needs to participate, the Baal HaBayit needs to make sure everybody feels comfortable. Therefore, everybody has Agadot, right? Everybody has Agadah. Each person, he reads a portion that they're actually performing the mitzvah. And so, there's a rabbi, his name is the Tosfot Yom Tov. There's a custom, some people have this custom, maybe you've seen this, where, you put a nice white tablecloth on, or whatever you put on, that to actually, on purpose, take the wine and spill it the seder leader, the Baal Habayit. By the way, if you're married, don't say the rabbi told you to do this. Something I didn't tell you to do this. That's not me. It's not up to me. They get upset at you because they worked so hard. But there's a custom to do this. And what's the reason? What's the reason? Because we want to make the people feel at ease, comfortable. Oh look, the Baal Habayit, he's a klutz. he himself, poured the wine. Now everybody feels a little bit more at ease. And comes out here is something very, very interesting. That the way to get there, the way to make everybody feel at ease, I'm going to tell it, I'm going to express to people how to do it, and I'm going to tell you to do it through how we're going to do it through a episode that happened in the Torah. As you know, we have 3 forefathers and we have 4 mothers. We have Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, right? Then we have 4 mothers. We have Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. I want to focus on one of the 4 mothers today. Her name is Rivka. I want to tell you, Rivka was very unique. If you pay close attention, Abraham had a wife and a concubine. Sarah was his wife, the main wife, and then he had Hagar. That's where Yitzchak and Ishmael comes from. Yaakov had 2 wives, and they ended up actually being later on 4 wives. Okay? Yitzchak only had 1 wife. Only one, Rivka. So I heard a question once, how come the other forefathers had multiple wives, but Yitzchak only had 1? Rivka was so unique that she had all these qualities that the other foremothers had. She had all of them in one person. So he didn't need to marry anybody else. That's how unique Rivka was. And so the story tells us that who was the matchmaker? How did they meet, Rivka and Yitzchak? She come from a place called Padan Aram. And Avraham Avinu said to his helper at the time, his right-hand man, his name is Eliezer, he says, I want you to go to this place, and I want you to find a woman for my son from this place. Now it's a bit confusing, and I'll tell you why. He decided to take him to a place in Padan Aram where everybody was there. The city was known to be a city of swindlers. What's a swindler? Someone who's a con man. They deceive you. They lie to you. They manipulate you. It's very troubling. Why would Avraham Avinu send his right-hand man as the matchmaker, go find a wife from that place? I don't, what's that all about? Why would you do that? No, I want you to go there. He says, okay, yes sir, I'm going over there. And he decides to he finds Rivka. You guys remember the story with Rivka and the camels? I'm not going to get into it right now. But that's the story. He goes over there and he sends him. Rivka comes from, let's just say, not the best environment, to say the least. She didn't have good role models. Both her father and her older brother were swindlers, deceivers, took advantage of people. She grew up in that household. One of the commentators, Rashi, tells us, this is in Parashat Chayei Sarah, where it gives us it tells us exactly where she comes from. The Torah, there's maybe 2 or 3 pages of ink invested in this whole story and repeats itself twice in the same parasha. There's a lot of things to learn from it. But then when we conclude this parasha, we go into Parashat Toldot, where it introduces Yitzchak as one of the forefathers. And then it tells us again for a 3rd time where Rivka comes from. You just told this to us. The Torah doesn't repeat itself several times. So Rashi says something very interesting. You know why it's repeating itself? To tell you that even though she grew up among gangsters, to say the least, they were kind of a form of gangsters, they would take advantage of people, right? But they wouldn't do it with force. They would do it with finesse. It's 2 different approaches. So he says, even though she grew up in that, she still, despite all that, she remained righteous. So that's what Rashi explains. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Lavan, her brother, and who he was. Lavan was somebody who, if you wanted to deceive somebody, right? There's a way to do it, and people get away with it. But how do they do it? The way, and when I say this, I'm not that type of guy. Just this is how I understand it, so don't think I have previous experience in deceiving people. But this is very convincing material here. And I'll tell you, how does a person get to that reality? It's a very confident person that when you speak to them, you get a sense they know what they're talking about. But they're not arrogant, they're confident. And you see the difference, you sense the difference. But they possess the ability to deceive the victim into believing that whatever it is they're saying, it's I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing this for you. Now, how do they do that? Because they are able to figure out what is the person actually looking for, what do they want, and once they latch onto it, once they figure out exactly what they want, then now it's bait. They have bait, like fish bait, right? When you catch fish, it's bait. Now they're baiting the other person. Now they know exactly what to do to take advantage of them, to exploit them. But they're not going to do it in a blackmail format. They're going to come in and present themselves as, no, I'm here for you. I'm here to actually help you. Nobody feels a sense, in fact, they have a non-threatening demeanor. You don't feel threatened by them, not at all. They don't look scary. And that's a very scary reality. Maybe some people here know of a character like that. That's who Lavan was. He had that ability. And what's very interesting is that trait, yeah.
When you say he has the ability to deceive, are you saying in a positive or in a negative meaning?
Well, no, he did it in a negative way.
Okay.
He really took advantage. He was a trickster, right? He found ways to trick everybody.
Well, when you say trick, for his own personal gain?
Always for his own personal gain. But the way he did it is you were convinced it's for your personal gain. To only later find out you were the victim.
Wasn't he a liar?
Huh?
Say, like,
Oh no. He's for sure he comes off as a liar, but he uses things that are true. And the reason what a deceiver does, he goes into your reality. He understands your vulnerabilities. He says which areas you're sensitive to. And he says the right stuff to give you security. And now you have trust. And once that happens, but he knows exactly what you need. And he knows for him to get what he wants, he knows exactly what to do because he's giving you the security that you want for your vulnerabilities. He detects it. And I'll tell you how he does it in a second. But then he takes advantage of you. But he makes sure you feel secure. You feel very secure because he knows your vulnerabilities. And so it comes out that is, as you pointed to before, he used it for bad. Rivka, his sister, on the other hand, was not like that. She used it for good. How do we know this? With the whole story of the camels. She came, if you guys quickly remember, Eliezer came with his camels, he went to the well, and she wanted to, she saw this man, and she approached him. What would you like? She just gave him a drink. Here, take a drink. And he didn't even ask her a drink for the camels. She gave drinks to the camels before he even said anything. And she made sure, she didn't make him feel rushed at all. She did it accordingly. Because sometimes someone gives you something, you're shy to ask for more. No, she made sure she gave him enough. And she didn't take the same plate she gave him to drink from in the cup. She didn't give the camels. It was separate. Because you're not really going to share it. All these sensitivities she was able to pick up on. And so she took it to the side of good. She didn't exploit people or take advantage of people. That was Rivka's strength, obviously. Now, the idea here of chesed is you need to be sensitive, because when you're doing act of chesed, you need to be sensitive to the recipient. You need to be sensitive to the other side to understand what it is that they want. But how did Lavan do this? How did he understand? How does the other side understand? Oh, I know what you want. I understand. It's really no secret. It's rather probably even simple. The reality is, the way you come to understand what the other side wants, all we gotta do is just listen. All we gotta do is very simple. Listen to what the other side is telling you. Not to take advantage of them, God forbid, right? That's not what I'm suggesting here. And if we just listen to what the other side is saying, right? And it's, you're getting even into an argument with somebody. Yesterday, a few of the guys here were learning, and we were, whether it's husband or wife, whether it's friends, business partners, someone has an issue with something. There's a disagreement, you're talking, whatever it is. When you get into those disagreements and fights, what's the biggest issue? When one side is communicating, you're already preparing the response. Now you're listening, because when you prepare the response, it has to make sense. You're for sure listening, but you're not trying to understand what's the other side. Forget right and wrong. Put that on the side for a second. Right and wrong is one thing. Put it on the side for a second. Try to understand what the other side is saying. Internalize it. It's not. Nobody's in a court case right now. Obviously, when you win an argument, it feels great, for sure. But there's consequences to winning an argument, especially if you're married. So the reality is, you just try to internalize what is the other side actually saying to me, and allow it to just sit there and ponder for just a moment before you respond. And by the way, if you do think you understand, there's a recommendation. Say it over to the other side in your own words, demonstrating you understand what's being said. Showing, okay, is this what you mean? And if you don't, ask more questions. Seek to understand, not because you are trying to respond, but because you are trying to actually come to understand the other side so you can work out a problem. The problem is we get so caught up in our reality and we always want to prepare and answer back that we don't understand what's actually flying. All Lavan did was he listened. All Rivka did, she listened. It's unbelievable how many things you can do by just listening. It's such a simple superpower that we don't tap into often, especially because our mind is so consumed with so many stuff simultaneously, right? Work, maybe social media, family, whatever it is. We don't take a moment. What is actually being said to me? See, that's how Lavan did it. That's how, in your steps ahead. Your steps ahead by just saying, let me try to understand. Even a customer, business relationship, what is the customer actually telling me? Sometimes the best salesmen are not extroverts, they're introverts. They don't need to speak much. They sit, they understand what the customer is saying, and they offer the appropriate product or service for that individual. They're not trying to take advantage, they're just trying to understand. It's literally a superpower. And so, when Avraham said, I want you to go to that place where all the swindlers are, because when you find that right woman, I want that trait to be infused in the Jewish people. And you know what? We know the story that Lavan, what did he do? He lied, he deceived Yaakov. He said to him, remember when Lavan said to him, listen, Yaakov comes and says, hey, I want to marry Rachel, and I'm going to work for her for 7 years. He says, not a problem, you got a deal. 7 years, we're good. And he said, I want to marry your daughter, Rachel, right? Your youngest daughter, Rachel. You specified, youngest daughter, Rachel. You're just tell me your daughter, Rachel. Why youngest? Why this? So you don't say Rachel from the shuk, and you don't give me someone else. I want your, he specified word for it, Yaakov, because you know who Lavan is. What did Lavan end up doing? He ended up switching them. Leah came in, Rachel ended up being on the sidelines. She gave the secrets to her sister, whatever it is, because that's a special code, because she didn't want her sister to be embarrassed. He tricked them. But you see, Yaakov, he has the same gene. That genetic quality that Abraham wanted to be infused in the Jewish people, he had the same thing. Why? Because at the end, he did what Lavan thought he was doing to him, because Yaakov led Lavan to believe that he is actually deceiving him, when in reality, Yaakov was the one who was deceiving him the whole time. But he used it for good. And another time we can expand on that, because he ended up taking his daughters and he left and everything else. So Yaakov, it was a long-term goal for him, which comes out that Avraham Avinu, that's all he wanted. And I'm going to take it a step further. the place of Padan Aram. Aram is a location. Aram means that it comes to word Aramaic. And what's so fascinating is that place, what the Torah tells us is the ability of the Arameans with the Aramit. The Aramit is the language, but the ability of those people is they're able to have the ability to see the perspective of the other side. And it's so great because it's actually reflected within their language. What do I mean it's actually reflected within their language? Hebrew is one language. Hebrew oftentimes conveys and expresses how the person feels. In Aramaic, the perspective is from the opposite side. You're trying to, the language of Aramaic is oftentimes expressed and spoken in a way where, how is the other side, what is the other side feeling, what are they thinking? I'll give you an example. The Torah tells us, there's a portion in the Torah that discusses forbidden and illicit relationships. And in one of those portions, we're going to read it soon, in the next couple of weeks, it discusses incestuous relationships. Relationships where siblings cannot marry each other. Right? It's obviously an idea that is repulsive. At the same time, the Torah writes about it. Because people have engaged in these things. And so, the Torah says the following. It says, Ve'ish asher yikach et achoto bat aviv o bat imo. If a man decides to take his sister from his father or mother's side and marry her, etc. And then it says, Ve'ra et ermata v'i tireh et ermato chesed hu. Torah tells us, if a man marries his sister, it's chesed. Chesed? What do you mean it's chesed? It's a bit outrageous. How is that chesed? How is that kindness? So Rashi, see, when you read something like that, the Torah doesn't really make sense. It's not chesed, it's disgusting. It's repulsive. How are you calling it chesed? That's why you need commentary in the Torah. You need to understand what the Torah is actually telling you. You know what Rashi writes? He gives us the following. He said, chesed hu, lashon arami. Chesed means, it's in the Torah referring to here, it's an Aramaic terminology. What do you mean it's an Aramaic terminology? Herpa, hisuda. Herpa means shame. It means embarrassment. That's what chesed means here. Which means that the word chesed is very fascinating. In Hebrew, if I'm doing chesed, right? I'm doing an act of kindness with somebody. I feel great. It's how it's being expressed. You feel great. You did a good act. You feel good with yourself. How does the other side feel? The other side feels not very good. There's a sense of embarrassment oftentimes, or shame. In Aramit, chesed means shame. In Hebrew, chesed means kindness. You see, from Hebrew perspective, it's how I feel. From Aramaic perspective, it's how the other side feels. That's why the Torah is unbelievable. If you wanted to learn where all the rules and laws come from, we have the Talmud, we have the Gemara. The majority of the Gemara, you know how it's written? In Aramaic. It's written in a way where when the rabbis talk to each other, they try to understand each other's perspectives. They try to, what are you actually saying? They can go back arguing pages in the Gemara, back and forth, until the other side understands, oh, that's what you, okay, now I see what you're saying, I concede, you are correct. And sometimes it's left with a tie, not because it's an argument, we don't know, both are valid opinions. When Mashiach comes, we'll know exactly what the opinion is, who's the correct opinion. It's called teko. Like in soccer you have teko, 1-1, you don't know. Like in Hebrew, we say teko means it's a draw, it means a draw. We don't know. Whenever Mashiach comes, we know what the halakha is. But if you read the Gemara, it's always a question and answer format. We always question, we always try to know, we try to understand. By questioning, by having the right questions, you can also listen and understand better. You know, Jews, we're obsessed with questions. We have a thing where we enjoy a good answer, but a good question, especially when you're learning, but a good question, it can be an unbelievable feeling. Wow, that is a very sweet question. It's a thing where it does something for us. Good questions, good quality questions. We always question, we want to know. But the art of questioning can very much be the difference between I understand where you're coming from and now I can connect to you versus I'm just trying to hear myself speak over you. And that's the biggest challenge is everybody wants to be heard, and there's a time and place for that. But when there's a dispute, there's a disagreement, and you're trying to understand the other side, is just take a moment, ask questions, try to understand what the other side is saying. And this happened to me today. I was with my wife, and she said something that initially I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I could have responded in a way that wasn't correct. 5 years ago, I probably would have. But then I asked a few more questions, and then I understood what she said. And then and where she was coming from was very, very valid. Because I asked additional questions the problem is, when you're talking to somebody, right, you have a dispute, you have a disagreement, or you're upset. The problem becomes is someone says something, and then, let's say that day, someone saw something that triggered them. And then what they saw trigger them has very much to do with what the other person said. But the other person had no idea what you saw, what you experienced. And all of a sudden, we're emotionally reacting. It's not even related. And they don't understand, like, why are you overreacting? But we saw something that triggered us, right? And maybe it got the best of us in the moment, whatever it is. Or maybe we have hidden traumas in there, or hidden anxieties. And certain things someone says is a trigger. And it's a trigger here and a trigger there. And then we react. But we have to say, wait a second, hold on. Before you assume that the other side had a malicious intent, ask questions. Try to understand. Wait, what do you mean by that? Can you tell me? Can you explain yourself to me? Have a conversation. Because you can't get anywhere without questioning. Yosef and his brothers, the Torah, even though the Torah appreciates a person who's direct and honest, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a filter, right? That's not what I'm referring to. Being direct and honest in that regard. What I mean is, the rabbis say that when Yosef's brothers, they hated him. They couldn't stand him. They could not even speak to him. And then I heard a very nice commentary by a rabbi, it's a contemporary book, I don't know his name. He says, you know why they couldn't come to peace with him? Because they couldn't even talk to him. Which means if you want to get to peace with somebody, you gotta learn how to talk to them. Communicate. This is how we separate ourselves from any other creature. We can communicate. It's an unbelievable thing because one of the things that a lot of times there are rabbis who have an immense amount of knowledge. They know so much. That's great. It takes a lot of hard work. One of the things that very much drew me to my rabbi, he's in his 80s, is when I first came to speak to him, probably within a minute to 2 minutes, right away he understood what the problem is. But he let me speak for maybe a good 10, 15 minutes. He also understood that the person has a need to be heard. And more than that, that needs to be understood. When you're at that age, you have so much experience, you hear people coming to you with different sets of issues and problems, right away you can detect it. It's not like, oh, no, I know what the answer is. I got it. Boom, boom, no. Talk to me. And every time I call him and ask him a question, on the phone or in person, I get absolute silence from him, and he looks at me dead in the eye. He looks at me and he's probably analyzing my tone of voice. He's probably trying to figure out what's actually bothering me or whatnot. It's such a superpower. And he doesn't even think, oh, I know what the answer is already. I mean, I think he probably knows the answer already, but he doesn't think that way. He's genuinely trying to understand what is being said to him. They wrote an article about him. There's a religious magazine, and they discuss this aspect where he just genuinely cares and wants to listen to what you have to say. And it's such an incredible feeling that when you speak, someone is there to listen, at least from the perspective of the speaker. It's an unbelievable feeling. Because you feel like this person genuinely cares. They're not trying to talk over me. They're not trying to tell me how I feel or whatever it is, or trying to control my reality. They're actually trying to listen to what's being said. And this is where it comes out unbelievable. I asked, in the beginning, I asked two simple questions. I said, why are we inviting someone to come sit down at the table when we already did Kiddush? We're trying to understand that. what is the Baal Bayit doing? What is the person who's leading the seder, what is he doing? By saying, hey, let anybody come, invite whoever is hungry. He's communicating to the guests. It's about you. And I'm here for you. And I'm trying to make you feel comfortable. I'm not really going out inviting people. The seder, sitting together, I'm verbally saying, whoever wants to come and eat, you guys are the guest of honor. But you can bring whoever you want to bring. Just come. You can bring, it's about you, it's not about me. He's trying to make the other side feel welcome, comfortable, so they can speak freely. It's about them, it's not about him. It's about trying to understand the other side. That's the aspect of Aramaic. And that's very much why we say, Ha lah ma'anen. That's why we begin this portion with Aramaic language. Because the Aramaic language is a holy language. It's a language in which, Hebrew is a holy language, but so is Aramaic. It's a language where we need to understand that when people are going to give over the story of Pesach, everyone has a perspective. People need to be heard. Let people ask the questions. Let people participate. Let them talk. Let them say their own perspective. Everybody needs to feel secure and comfortable. That's why it's a message where everybody on the table needs to get a sense of, I'm genuinely interested in what the other side has to say and their perspective. And oftentimes when we genuinely listen, we don't just learn. We also can learn new things about ourselves, which is an unbelievable thing as well. Someone can share with you a concept or a story, and he could answer a very difficult, maybe your internal complex situation you have within yourself. Because sometimes when Hashem talks to us, He can talk to us through people. He communicates. We just have to have our ears open. I'm sure you have a situation where maybe you spoke to a stranger, or you said something to somebody, and they came to you 5 years later and said, you know, one time you said this and this to me? You know, that really hit me. That really made a difference. They said one or two words. There is something, I'm not going to end off on it, but it's sad. I want to share it. It's very sad. On Monday night, I didn't hear it, but there were screams on my block. I don't know if I was home or not. And my next door neighbor, literally my next door neighbor, very tragically, very, very sadly, and her only son committed suicide at age of 23. And this year should be Leilu Nishmato. And one of the things that although it's outrageous, I don't actually take any blame for this, but it's not someone I actually went and I had a conversation with and I spoke to. And he lived right next to me, fellow Jew. For some reason, and at my house on Shabbat, I have a lot of people come over to my house Shabbat and we learn. And this holy Jew was next to me. I didn't have much conversation with him. I don't know why. After 120, each person, we go up to Shemaim, they ask you questions. If they say, how come you never reached out to this Jew next to you? How come you never spoke anything to him? I'm not saying I would have changed the result. It's not what I'm suggesting. And I'm not taking blame for it. I have nothing to say. I would have nothing to say. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm not blaming myself, obviously. I just want to explain. I didn't even reach out, or ask questions, or try to understand it. And it's something that it's going to carry me my whole life. I'm never going to forget this. Ever. Now, do you think that you can make a difference? Yes. As a Jew, you always think you can make a difference. Are you in control of the results? No, you're not in control of the result. But reaching out to somebody, talking to them, having a conversation, trying to understand. He had severe depression. very, very severe depression. And when someone does something like that, it must mean the pain they had was immeasurable. And the stories I heard about him, he is a person who genuinely cared about other people and listened to other people when they spoke. And did acts of kindness that his own parents didn't know. They had no idea. His mother just mentioned that he raised money on Thanksgiving for people who didn't have money for Thanksgiving. He raised money for them in a different state completely. No idea. It's when someone like that, you're talking to him and he listens. And then a person called him crying, saying, if it wasn't for your son, I wouldn't be here today. I just couldn't do it for him. And they were crying on the phone. There's so many things that we can, someone speaks to us, when we listen. Depression is a very ugly thing. I'm not an expert in it. But one time I saw a video, it really hit hard. It hit so hard, that video, where you have two older men, maybe 40s and 50s. Maybe some of you have seen this video. It's about maybe 30 or 40 seconds long, where the camera focuses on both of them. And they're at a soccer game. And that's at least what it looks like. And then one guy is a little down, a little, maybe even, he comes off just out of it, low energy, doesn't seem to be very happy. And the other guy is happy, he's ecstatic. And when in the team, you don't see the game, the camera always focuses on them. If someone scores a goal, everybody's happy. And the guy is sitting down in the chair, he's a little down. And the other guy's happy. And it does one game like that, 2 games. It's exactly the same scenario. One guy's happy, the other's a little down. Again and again. And then by the last scene, the guy that's been down, he comes in, he sits down, and then he looks over to the right, where his friend sat that was happy, and the seat is empty. And then it cuts off and it says, depression is a very severe disease. You can't really tell so much sometimes. You can't. You would think it's the other person, because he was down, low energy, unenthusiastic, upset, but it was the other guy who came off as happy, who came off as everything is good. It was that guy. And it's very, we can't save the world, obviously, but can we listen? Someone is talking to us, what are they being said? It's not perfect. I'm saying this to myself time and time again, and it doesn't get easier at times. It can get more challenging, especially when you have kids. How many times, I kid you not, and I say this with I'm not proud of it, where I know my daughter is talking and I know what she's saying already. I don't even let her speak. And I feel guilty about it, and I realize, no, I can't do that anymore. She needs to be, it's not just let them speak, they need to be heard. By the way, a part of Lashon Hara is people just want to be heard when it comes to Lashon Hara. They just want to be heard. It makes noise. But if we give it the proper and we just want to hear what the other side, this is what it's all about. Hear the other side, understand them, see exactly what they're experiencing. This is the language of Aramit, that I focus on trying to understand what the other side is experiencing or what the other side is feeling. This is Pesach is all about. We ask questions on the table. This is the sipur, the storytelling of the Exodus, recounting all the miracles. All these things, collectively speaking, this is what when we come to the table, when the other side feels like he's understood and he's heard, they feel good. The other side feels good, and if they feel good, there's nothing that's the happiness and the unity, the camaraderie and the synergy on the table is incredible. When someone knows I have somebody to talk to that genuinely understands me, it's therapeutic. It's a relief. You can save lives by just listening and taking it towards the good. It's an absolute superpower. And Be'ezrat Hashem, when we listen, when we genuinely try to listen to the other side and try to understand them, when we come and we pray to Hashem, what do you think Hashem is going to do? You work hard on listening to other people, it's not easy. When you talk to me, he always listens to us. But the understanding and the response to us, and our tefillah, our prayer is going to be on a whole different level. And it's good to do it with ourselves too, not just others. You can, I'm not saying walk in the street and start talking to yourself. You're people. I don't want people to think you're schizophrenic. That's not the idea. But you're allowed to have conversations in your mind on yourself and try to understand certain things that are going on with yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. It's normal, it's healthy, and you could figure things out. But you also gotta listen. You gotta really listen to, and there's people in your life that will, there's a problem. There's people in your life, you tell them, listen, I have a problem with this situation. They'll tell you exactly what you do wrong. Because they know, like for example, there's a lot that I do wrong. And if I want to find out, I just call my wife. Boom, she tells me. Boom, no problem. She listens, but right away she knows exactly, she can pinpoint this is the problem. Okay. And this is the message. We're on the table. It's a language Aramaic. We don't really understand it. No. It's a lesson. It's a language where we've got to understand the other side. Everybody should come and eat. We want to make everybody feel comfortable. Everybody's on the table. Everybody has got a perspective. You ask questions. This is what Pesach is about. When the other side understands me, I can connect to the other side. And the values we merge with each other. And that's ultimately we have unity. In this time, there's nothing more that we need than unity. Are there any questions? רפואה שלום, בעזרת השם לשיעור שבי לרפואה של שרה חיה בת מזל, הלן מאורנה, בת חן חנה, רונן בת רחל, אסף בן סופיה, לעילוי נשמת שמואל דוד בן מאיר. ברוך ה' לעולם אמן ואמן. Are there any questions? Anybody?